All right, we've reached the month of March into this campaign for you, Joseph Hernandez, running for state comptroller. Got the nomination just last month at the convention. Congratulations on that. As you've now navigated to this point, I guess as we look now, as we get closer to what will be potentially a primary on the Democratic side, and then we get to the general, where are you at in your campaign? How are things looking?
Well, look, we're doing great. We're really excited about the opportunity. We're so honored to have gotten both the Republican and the Conservative Party nominations. So we're working hard to really meet the constituents. So I've been traveling a lot, especially to upstate and to the western part of New York. It's been great. I've had some really, really good meetings up there, and just delighted to be meeting people and getting their perspective on the importance of this role and what we need to do in the state to make sure that the comptroller really acts as a real watchdog, which is the intent of this role.
What do people ask you about this role?
Well, there's a lot of people that have given their life to the state, and they depend on the pension fund performance. So, there's a lot of feedback on the performance. Last year we had 5.8% return, which is really, in my opinion, mediocre. That fund should be returning, double digits based on the market performance. If you compare it to funds like CalPERS or the Ontario's Teachers Union Fund or the Canadian Pension Fund, we are way, way below where we should be. Those funds return almost 12%. We got 5.8. So they're concerned about the returns. They want to make sure that we do something there to manage that fund correctly. And honestly, they're worried about fraud and abuse. I mean, they see the stuff what's happening in Minnesota and really throughout the nation, and they want this role to be a watchdog, which is really what the role is supposed to be. You're supposed to be, the last barrier before a taxpayer dollar leaves the state coffers, and we haven't really had a real watchdog for the last 19 years. So they want change there. They really do.
I did have the comptroller on since we last spoke, and we talked about some of the things that we spoke about. And we talked about that and Medicaid specifically. And he said, well, from our standpoint, we're saving from our oversight about $1 billion in Medicaid when it comes to what they're able to find and root out. Is that not good enough for you? Is that where you think it should
Absolutely
be?
not. I mean, that's mediocre performance, to be quite honest. Look, our Medicaid expenditure is $124 billion. It's the largest in the country. It is if you compare our expenditure to Minnesota, for example, where you've seen all this fraud and abuse. And so the Minnesota Medicare budget is about 19 billion. Ours is 124. So I guarantee you we have 10x the fraud and abuse that we're seeing in Minnesota just because of the system and the volume of dollars that are running through our processes. I can tell you, now that the raw data is available on billing and Medicaid, we've analyzed some of that data, and the fraud is at the surface. I mean, it doesn't take a scientist a rocket scientist to really analyze that data. I happen to be a scientist, so I was able to analyze the data. I can tell you there's obvious fraud and abuse, and we need to do something about it. We can't just sit idly and not do anything about it. This is our taxpayer dollars demand this of us. This is what the role is supposed to do, and I plan to be a very aggressive watchdog and protect our taxpayers. That's what we should be doing.
From what you've seen, then where is that coming from? Is it people taking advantage? I know there's a few different ways, right? Is it
Well,
people double
yeah.
payments?
Well, it's really interesting. The fraud has been industrialized. I mean, there are processes by which you're able to kind of cheat the system. Multiple billing of people. You have one patient, you bill 25 different codes. Obviously, that's fraud. When the average is significantly less. You have this concentration of home health care, concentration of billing that just looks anomalous. I mean, we have a very large concentration here in Manhattan of billing that it looks erratic. These are things that should be looked at, and is not, honestly.
We didn't get too much deep into the budget conversation and oversight of that last time of the state spending. So I did want to dig a bit into it here. And since we last spoke, the governor and with the mayor of New York City coming out with that 1.5 billion for the city, and also more money for different municipalities upstate too, at Rochester, Buffalo, and we know Albany got the 400 million last year. What in terms of policy, what does that look like to you?
It's crazy, to be honest. We continue to spend. We continue to really add to the really the long-term expenditure. These expenditures are not short-term one-time investments. These are long-term investments that we're committed to as a state And I think that's dangerous. We're not looking at reducing cost anywhere. We haven't done really a good job at where is the fat to be cut here? There's a lot of fat to be cut here. And I think it's a dangerous trajectory. We are in a situation where we are counting on Wall Street bonuses to support our state budget. And everybody knows Wall Street is cyclical. I mean, things come and go. We don't really have a good solid strategy for making sure that we have an expanded tax base. We're not doing anything to make sure that we keep the residents and the companies here in New York so that they don't go away. We don't have a strategy to really invest in new companies to move to the state so that we have a future tax base, not only for taxpayer reasons, but also for creating the next generation of jobs so our kids don't have to leave the state. So I think we really need to be very strategic about how we spend our capital and where we allocate our capital. I mean, the MTA is a perfect example of a runaway train. There's been no analysis to cut costs there, to look for efficiencies, to look for fraud and abuse. It's across the system. We don't really have a good control process of fiscal responsibility, and we need to bring that back to the table.
But with the city facing a deficit, I believe it's down to between 5 and 7 billion. I guess those are the latest numbers that the mayor had given us. What is the office's role? What would be your role in trying to tackle that deficit?
Well, look, I think again we have to look at where the fraud and abuse is. It's there. It's an obvious situation. If you're going to look at the big boluses of expenditures, things like again Medicaid is a large expenditure. We have a lot of other allocations of the Department of Education. We need to look at where the inefficiencies are. The MTA, as I mentioned earlier, these are areas of big buckets of dollars where you can find efficiency, number one. And number two, there's fraud and abuse. We have to really, pop the hood and look underneath, make sure we have real-time audits. I plan to introduce real-time audits to the system using artificial intelligence, using really quantitative methods, looking at big data to make sure that we understand where all this money is going. Is it going to the right people? Are we paying them multiple times? Because that's been the case in several situations that we've looked at. So there's got to, and I plan to bring in a fraud strike team. These are going to be professionals whose only job is going to be to look at fraud and abuse in the system. We're going to bring in forensic accountants, people that know how to create financial criminal cases so that we can hand that to prosecutors and really put people who are stealing from our kids, from our law enforcement officials, from our educators, to bring them to justice. They cannot get away with this, and we should be harsher. We should be more aggressive. This is supposed to be a watchdog. You're supposed to be the last gate before a dollar leaves the state coffers, and we're not doing that right now.
Right now, the options presented seem to be these one shots, these 1.5 billion taxing the wealthy more, corporate taxes. That wouldn't be on the table for you.
I think we have to be more logical. I mean, look, we are the most taxed state in the nation. The reality is everybody thinks we have this sort of infinite amount of millionaires and billionaires in our state. We don't. We only have 82,000 people, 82,262 to be exact, that make $1 million or more. We only have 700 corporations that pay 75% of all the taxes. So if these people leave, if these companies leave, we're going to be in a very dire situation. And they're already doing that, by the way. They're being attracted by cities like Miami and Dallas. I mean, again, these are going to be the next generation of financial hubs. If we're not serious about keeping these people and these companies here, I think we're in a very bad trajectory. We're spending more and our tax base is leaving, and our government's being inefficient about rules and regulation. We got to put an end to this. So we're going to be in a very significant financial crisis.
When it comes to the oversight portion of this budget and the governor's proposal, because I think obviously you say that the spending is too much right now, but also there are proposals in this budget by the governor's office that the comptroller says would eliminate oversight for $4 billion of taxpayer money being spent and raising some of those thresholds that there would be the ability to look at procurements and things like that. Are you okay with that? What's your response to that?
Absolutely not. Listen, I agree with. This is the one thing I think Tom and I agree on. The role is supposed to be an independent, elected watchdog. We are supposed to be this role. If I'm so honored to be elected, is supposed to be the gate of ensuring that dollars are going to the right places, that are not being abused, that there's no fraud in the system. The fact that we have a $50,000 threshold, I think, in my opinion, violates the Constitution. The Constitution is very clear. It says that this role is supposed to approve all vouchers that come into the state, all vouchers. There's no definition about a limit. The fact that we're changing that from 50 to $300,000, I think goes contrary to the intent of the Constitution. I think it's unconstitutional. I would foresee that if that moves forward, that this will end up in some litigation because I think it's not the intent of this particular role to be minimized. It is supposed to be the watchdog of the taxpayers. And right now, by reducing the power of that office, in my opinion, is violating the Constitution.
The governor, her office, though, would say that maybe that would slow down the bidding process, the procurement process, and not allow for progress for different projects and things like that.
Listen, we live in 2025. We have artificial intelligence.
26, Joseph, 26.
26, sorry, hold on a second. Yeah, I'm 26. Sorry, maybe I'm living last year, but we're 2026. We are modern economy. We're modern society. You can send money across the world in seconds. Give me a break. Give me a break. You can approve contracts in a modality that allows for efficiency. I would argue that I'm going to bring in technology. Part of my goal is to modernize the office and bring in not only modern technology as it relates to artificial intelligence, but also more modern bidding systems, more transparent systems, so that taxpayers see real time where their dollars are going, who's using them, so that we have full transparency. This is a very poor excuse, and they got to come up with another one. That doesn't make any sense to me.
Just finally here, just to circle back to the convention and your campaign, and when you were nominated, you said something about $1 billion investment in Israel bonds. What does that mean?
Well, look, I think we have to. So there's a couple of things I want to do to the office of the investment side. One is I want to bring in an in-house investment team, and this is what CalPERS does. This is what the Teachers Union, the Teachers Fund in Canada does. This is what the Canadian Fund does as well. They have an in-house investment team. Right now, we're paying Wall Street $1.4 billion to manage our capital. We should have a team in-house. I know how to build those teams. I work on Wall Street. I know exactly what we need to do to really build a solid investment team to make sure that we keep the returns. We're not paying these fees. As it relates to diversification of the investments, you got to use portfolio theory. You have a fiduciary duty to reduce risk, to make sure that you have the capital deployed in a way that gives you the highest level of return, but that minimizes risk. Part of that strategy is to invest in things like private credit, venture, infrastructure, international investments, and also including sovereign funds. And part of when you look at the sovereign fund market, and I spent some time looking at these, there are a number of funds that are, in my opinion, investment grade. Of course, the U.S. Treasuries, you have the U.K. Treasuries, you have German Treasuries, and you have Israeli Treasury. And when you look at the spectrum of options, and you look at risk-adjusted returns, the Israeli funds are great. They return about 4.1%. The U.S. Treasury is 4.25%, while the UK returns a little bit higher. The volatility is very wide. So from an investment perspective, it makes total sense to invest in Israeli funds. So part of my strategy is to look at this real time and to make investments where the fiduciary duty requires us to do that. And investing in Israeli funds is a good strategy. I totally agree. I totally think from an investment perspective, it makes total sense to do so.
Investing $1 billion?
I think $1 billion is a good number. I mean, I think we have to sort of look at again, the portfolio theory and how you allocate funds, but I think that's a reasonable number. I would like to deploy more capital in sort of the higher return sectors, like venture and private credit, and structured deals, and bringing in an in-house investment fund will allow us to get higher returns, but also structuring the deals. Right now, we don't do anything like sidecar deals, co-investment deals. These are things that are typically done in venture capital funds that allow you to really maximize the return. Right now, we're just handing money to Wall Street and saying, go invest it, and send us the bill when you're all said and done. And that's the reason we're a 5.8% return. That's dismal. If you had that kind of return on Wall Street, you'd be fired. I mean, this is the Treasury returns 4.25, as I said. You might as well put that money in Treasury bills, lay off the 2,700 people you have in staff, and give back the $600 million budget you have, and go to sleep. But obviously, that's not what we're going to do. We're going to make sure we get higher returns, and that we ensure that our pensioners get the returns that they need, and that we follow through on our commitment to make sure they have a good retirement and they have a safe retirement, and that we don't have to ask our taxpayer base to contribute more to the pension fund. We already asked them. We already asked for a lot of money, and we don't need to ask them for more of that.
Just one more follow-up on that, because obviously it's what is going on in the world right now. An investment like that, hypothetically, in the midst of what's become now an escalating conflict in an unstable environment, someone would call that in the Middle East, would you still be confident in that?
Look, I think this role has a fiduciary duty to the pensioners. You have to make decisions that are not politically filtered. Right now, the office makes decisions, unfortunately, on political filters across the spectrum, not only on political things like Israel, but also on DEI issues. About 22% of our fund, by the way, 22% of our investable fund goes to DEI focused funds. Is that really the filter we should be using? I would argue that politics should not be part of it. It is internal rate of return. Funds that are here on Wall Street that raise capital from other sources, they don't use political filters, and we shouldn't use a political filter for investing here. That's the philosophy that I bring to the office. We should not be using political filters to make investments. Our pensioners deserve the highest level of return, irrespective of this political backdrop.
Joseph Hernandez, thanks so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Lovely to speak with you. Have a good one.